Welcome to I Said What I Said, a sports podcast giving you opinions not heard anywhere else. I'm your host, Brad Wakai, coming to you with my co host, Tyson Gentry. Tyson, bittersweet moment here, man. We are wrapping up our conference previews. And I say it's bitter because we love doing this stuff. We love putting in the work and making sure that we're on the same page, or at least we have our opinions when it comes to these conferences. But it's sweet because we're about ready to start some football, baby.
We got week 0 like this week, man, and it's a good feeling. I don't feel any bittersweet. I am ready to
You're
get
feeling
into the
sweet.
man. The talking part's almost done, and then we get to watch with our eyes because in the NFL it's a little different. We got joint practices all the time and stuff, and then college ball, it's like every team right now. There's so much smoke around everybody.
Exactly. And so if you've been following along, we're closing out with the SEC, saving the best for last. If you haven't seen our ACC, our Big 12, our Pac 12, or our Big 10 we just did, go check those out on our YouTube or on Spotify, Apple, or however else you listen to your podcast. But we're jumping into the SEC, Tyson, and there's four clear teams. I think three clear teams that have the best talent in this conference, the most elite level of staff, most elite level of players, and then you kind of tier things down from there. And so we have to start with the Georgia Bulldogs, who are coming off of a repeat national championship last year. They're going for a three-peat, which is never been done except for in the 1940s with Minnesota football, believe it or not. So first modern era team that could pull that off. Let Stetson Bennett gone, right? Like that's the big thing we're looking at. Carson Beck is going to fill in. He's been in the program for a while, was a 4-star, talented type of kid. We don't really know what he's going to bring in live reps when you really need it. So I'll pass it over to you. What are you expecting from Georgia? What's got your eye? You think they can do it? All the good stuff with them.
It's a catch-22 with Stetson Bennett being gone because it was fun to make fun of him. I think Georgia fans among probably better than anybody else. Like the dude could play, and he was really good for a college quarterback. Like to the point where he was closer to some of your guys' favorite players out there in college than you want to admit because he's just a little walk-on kid. And the story was played up a ton. Carson Beck's going to be fine. Like it's Brock Vandagriff behind him, and dude, Todd Monken's gone. It's Mike Bobo. They replaced it's Lad McConkey's still there. Brock Bowers is still there. The offensive line is going to be elite, and you know what you're getting on defense. It almost is like, look, they didn't take the mantle from anybody because this has been building for quite a while in Georgia. I think the last couple of years obviously put a little cherry on top of what Kirby and the staff have been able to do, but they've been turning and burning studs for a decade. And so, like, I don't really want to get into the minutia of this roster. Basically, if you haven't seen Georgia play over the last 3 years, then you don't really know what to expect. And if you have, you've seen most of these dudes play high-level football and kick the shit out of your favorite team.
So they're 80th in returning production with 61% back. That dips to 52% on the offensive side of the ball, 70% back on the defensive side, which is like hard to imagine with the names that have left. But we're going to have another defense. That's great. Tyson, there's two teams, I think, in the country really that you can point to and say, I'm not concerned about them losing production from last year because the recruits they have behind them are just as good, if not better. Like that's just the way we're at with Georgia, with Alabama. You can pencil in Ohio State, who's been that way for a while, and Michigan's kind of starting to get into that realm, but I think it's a little too soon. But Georgia's one of these teams. So when I love to look at returning production, I don't think that applies here for Georgia. My big question mark that I have is Carson Beck and the new offensive coordinator, because let's be honest here, man. Todd Monken was great for him. Like he transformed this offense. They became explosive. They did not look like a Georgia offense that we became accustomed to under Mark Richt, who was the old coach. And they really started spacing this thing out and letting their superior athletes get in space. Now you expect Mike Bobo to do the same thing.
He's done it.
Similar things. But there's a reason Todd Monken has been in the NFL. There's a reason he's getting another shot in the NFL. And there's a reason Bobo is going to take over a position at Georgia. And so that's my only thing here. I know the defense is going to be great. Brock Bowers is going to be a Heisman contender, at least from the media perspective, even though he's never going to win. But other than that, you expect them to win the East because nobody else can compete with them, and they're going to be in the SEC championship. And Tyson, they're probably going to be competing for a three-peat.
And this is something that just doesn't happen. And maybe Georgia broke college football. because we were bitching about Bama for so long, but at least we got I've won every other year with somebody new, and now it just kind of feels like, well, it's Georgia and every single season for the last couple.
And I think the most kind of before we transition into Alabama, what's crazy and scary to think about for college football, just like you said, there's so much talent in the state of Georgia. Like it was a sleeping giant for the longest time that, all of a sudden Georgia that my parents grew up watching is great again. Of course I'm going to play for them. My parents want me to go there. Like, why would I not want to represent the state that I'm from? Whereas Alabama, yes, it's a very good high school pipeline of players. It ain't the same as Georgia football in high school. And I think that's the difference between what Alabama's been able to accomplish, where they've had to be more national, and the Georgia's like, we can throw a rock and hit 17 5-star kids out of our facility.
I think there's only one other state in the entire country like that, and we'll get to them here in a moment.
Let's move to Alabama next. They're the second favorites in the conference. This is my thing with them, Tyson. We don't know who their quarterback's going to be this late into the season. Like, has that happened before? Because it's coming down to Jalen Milroe, who was the backup last year for Bryce Young, filled in for a couple games, really more of a spread option type, dual threat, mainly more of a runner. Or Tyler Buckner, who transferred down from Notre Dame following new offensive coordinator Tommy Rees. I'm not a big Buckner guy. I think he lacks accuracy. That's my main concern when he plays this higher level of conference. Is he going to be able to make these throws? But whenever you doubt Nick Saban, it doesn't really end up well for you.
Here's my thing with Alabama, and you can kind of jump in where you want here, but I think Alabama this year is going to look pretty similar to Alabama in the mid 2010s, early 2010s. And I don't mean the dominance. I mean, I think that's how the offense is going to look. I don't think they're going to be able to throw the ball the way that they want to, the way they've become accustomed to. Like, this might be closer to a Jalen Hurts-led Alabama offense or a A.J. McCarron Alabama offense, although Milroe is going to run. And I think he's going to win the job. I think Nick Saban look, dude, you got to take care of the football. That's a rule one, first and foremost. And, like, if you're not throwing and you're picking up 6 yards of carry behind center, he's fine with that. Change is the name of the game in Alabama this year. It's Tommy Rees is the new play caller. Kevin Steele is back, and he only has 5 returners on defense, right? Which sounds bad, again, like we were talking about with Georgia. But when you got 2 preseason All-Americans and 3 preseason All-SEC guys, 1 at each level, it makes your job a little easier with all the 5 stars coming in. And obviously, everyone's going to know about Kool-Aid McKinstry there at corner. They just replace guys year over year in that secondary. They're going to be fine. For the first time in a minute, I don't know if Alabama's going to be able to score as many points as they need to win the SEC.
Which is crazy to think about, right? Like, we never had to worry about Alabama offense because our defense was so good. Like, they could win games 6-3, like we saw. They could win.
Nobody wins games 6-3 anymore, though.
You just can't do it. And I think with the return of Kevin Steele, it's been tough for him outside of the Alabama walls. And so I think he's returning to Alabama with the idea of, can I get a new job here? How long am I going to stay? I mean, Nick Saban's comfortable and familiar with Kevin Steele. So I actually think their defense might look better than it has in recent years, where we're like, we expect this defense to be elite. And it's just like, man, this is a lot leakier than we've become accustomed to with Alabama. But Tyson, to your point, I've never seen this from an Alabama team. Like, even when they graduate players, there's at least contributors all over. They're 125th in the nation in returning production. Only 40% is back on either side of the football that's produced in a meaningful level last year. Like, it's crazy to me.
The worst wide receiver core in the history of, like, this version of Alabama football last season.
And that's what concerns me. Like, if and you're getting worse quarterback play and potentially worse wide receiver play, at least to the point we haven't seen them. But there are some big question marks about Alabama football, I think, for the first time in a while, as they didn't make the college football playoff last season.
And Jace McClellan and all those running backs are going to be fine. They're going to be able to run the ball. They're going to road grade up front, and they're going to do what they do. And it's going to look really simple when they play Ball State or whoever, and it's going to look really hard when they play Georgia. The point that Alabama football is at is they're expecting to be playing Georgia in an SEC championship game. They're expecting shootouts with LSU late in the season to kind of vie for that position. They normally win those games, and then they go on and they play in the SEC championship. Like, Nick Saban is 438 years old, and so at a certain point, like, it gets harder and harder to talk yourself into this team returning to dominance. If it's not now, like, are you just going to start a 5-star freshman next year at Alabama to play quarterback? That doesn't make sense to me.
I wonder if the leash for the quarterbacks are going to be pretty short and they give Ty Simpson a look.
Probably.
You know, like he's a talented kid, get him in there, get some reps. And like you said, when they bring in the inevitable 5-star quarterback, okay, you don't have to throw him in like you did Bryce Young right to the fire. Because who's going in for Georgia next year? Dylan Raiola, the number 1 player in the country.
Yeah.
Alabama had that. They had Bryce Young. He's not there anymore. So it's definitely interesting here for Bama. That's for sure. Let's move into LSU, your team here, Tyson. And I think you want to say the other state in the pipeline that's similar to Georgia is LSU and what they're able to offer with Louisiana.
I just think the talent out of Louisiana is check the NFL. Like, go run through NFL players and where they're from, and you're going to pop up with more Louisiana returns than just about anywhere else. I think Texas might have more. It's like Louisiana, Texas, California are almost always the top 3 there. Check the number of players coming out of high school here. Like, you can build a wall around New Orleans and compete for at least a top 10 team in the country. And now Brian Kelly kind of gets to put his fingerprints on something after having like 60% of available scholarships last season and a team that met each other 3 weeks before the season started.
10-4 last year after losing to Florida State, and everybody's like, what the hell? Brian Kelly sucks. Everybody was ready to dance on his grave because they don't like him. Now, this is a Brian Kelly podcast. I've been a fan of him. I don't care he yells. Like, ooh, it's a football coach. Get over it. The guy yells. Like, if that makes you uncomfortable, you're probably watching the wrong sport. Tyson, they're 32nd in returning production. They get 71% back from both their offense and defense. They're 10th in the nation in offensive production returning, led by Jaden Daniels, the transfer from Arizona State last year, who gets another year under Brian Kelly. And he threw for 2,900 yards last year on 68.6% completion percentage, which I think is great for him. 17 touchdowns, 3 picks, ran for 885 yards on the ground and added 11 touchdowns on the ground as well. He's dynamic. Like, we knew that at Arizona State. We just didn't know if it'd be able to translate to the SEC. Man, oh man, apparently he's added weight. He did this last season, second year with Brian Kelly's offense. Oof, I know you're excited.
Returned all 5 starting offensive linemen. There are not many SEC teams in the country you can say that about, because a lot of them, like we've been saying, are replacing 5 stars, leaving for the league with 5 stars coming in. LSU last year with kind of the fallout and then the arrival of Brian Kelly ended up losing a lot of players and losing scholarships through some things that we don't really need to talk about here. But like, this is another thing here is Harold Perkins might have been the best freshman defender in the country last season at LSU. He's back. And you mentioned their 70% returning production. Mason Smith was a preseason all-SEC player a year ago that hurt himself. I think he tore his ACL in game 1 against Florida State. He was celebrating teammates play, jumped up, landed, and tore his ACL. Now he is back. And so now you're excited about that. If you're LSU, you're worried that maybe Jaden Daniels isn't as good as people think that he is. But look, he led a last-minute drive to beat Alabama. The notes that LSU football ended on last year, if this was an ACC team, we'd be over the moon, right? But it's just they happen to have a couple boogeymen in the conference. Malik Neighbors, I think, is closer to the best wide receiver in the SEC than people are giving him any credit for, because last year was the Keyshawn Boutte show until week 7 or 8 when people kind of got over it and realized, like, hey, maybe this dude doesn't give a shit. Pass catchers galore. Mason Taylor, like I said, Neighbors, the running back room is always going to be good, but it comes down to the trenches. It always will with LSU. And I think Brian Kelly finally gets a athletic football team that he had some ability to build, because those Notre Dame teams were really good and they were really smart. They got out-athleted every single time they had a big game, and it's different now. And we saw it in October, November, and December last season.
100%. And I think when you think about Brian Kelly and what he was able to do at Notre Dame, you just said it perfectly. There was limitations on what you can build with that roster. First of all, to get into Notre Dame, it's really hard. Second of all, with those restrictions, you don't have the cachet of competing in a conference. Okay, you have a chance to win a conference championship game, things like that. It's hard to get people to Notre Dame, and considering how cold it is, a lot of these guys, man, I'll go to California, I'll go down to the South if I'm that good. So you play or Pokemon, right? Like the evolution. I don't think we've seen the final version of what Brian Kelly can evolve to as a coach. I think he's getting the opportunity here at LSU, where, like you said, they were really well coached at Notre Dame. Super fundamental, knew their strengths, knew their weaknesses, executed what Kelly wanted. But, there's a certain limit on that, right? There is no limit on LSU because the talent, the ability, and the type of player that they can get in that program just unlocks things we haven't seen, quite frankly, with what Kelly can offer on offense.
And last note I have on LSU is everyone's going to talk about how the secondary is basically all brand new and they might need some time to gel. The last time, Brad, that I can remember that the secondary was pretty much all brand new and needed time to gel was 2011. It's just every time. Like we talk about RBU, DBU. This is the defensive back university, and I don't really think it's close. Like every year, there's going to be somebody that comes in that's better than pretty much everybody else in the country, excluding one guy, right? It seems like Bama's always got one that's just he's a little different.
And Notre Dame's put players in the NFL when Kelly was there. So now you're getting DBU here. Yeah. All right, Tennessee. Now, last year was incredible for him, right? 11-2. Josh Heupel coming over from UCF in his second season. Things hit, man. Just boom, boom, boom. Hendon Hooker was the right quarterback for that offense. Got everything out, was running point guard, was just great getting the ball to the different athletes in space. And the offense was clicking on all cylinders. Now you have Joe Milton stepping in. Now, he's great, man. He's got a huge arm, and he looks good in workouts. Do we remember what he did on the field for Michigan and then for Tennessee? He got benched for Hooker. Like, I don't know. I get the hype, and it just looks great. And it's one of those things in summer. We love seeing these guys throw the rock around. But I remember when Joe Milton gets into a game, it just doesn't look that pretty.
And if he messes up, dude, it's Nico. Is it Lamaliva? Or it's either that or I don't know. But you've seen him if you're on social media. And he is as highly touted as it gets. So if we see stumbles, then it might be a situation where Heupel wants to get the freshmen some playing time. And I don't really want to talk about Jalen Hyatt leaving or Cedric Tillman leaving because it's a Josh Heupel offense. And so maybe the talent will be a little bit different, but the NFL just told you what they thought about both those guys. And he had Jalen Hyatt winning best receiver in the country awards, right? And Cedric Tillman, before he got hurt, was the best receiver on that team. Both those guys are 3rd and 4th round picks. The defense was way better last year. I don't know if Tim Banks can keep that up. Allowing 22 points a game at Tennessee is really, really impressive. And that was in a case where a lot of times it kind of seemed like they were up 50 at half and, we were rolling out backups to play Tennessee in the 3rd and 4th quarter because this thing is lost. And if that's not the case this year, I think they're a lot closer to that 30 points a game that we saw in 2021, 2022, or 2020, that it'll be tough, man, because there's nothing better than watching a Josh Heupel offense play football. It just feels it's like you have the controller and you get to pick whatever play you want because he's out there running wild shit. And if the offense isn't quite as good, look, the offense was unreal last year and they couldn't get over the hump. So to sit here and say, oh, with all these new pieces, this could be the one, I doubt it.
Well, I got to play on Tennessee for sure coming up in Money Making Time, so make sure to stay tuned for that as we give you out our win total bets on the season. Nico Iamaleava. I think that's how you say it. Iamaleava.
Okay. Well, in college, it's pronounced Iamaleava when he hits the transfer portal after he doesn't get to play this year.
I love that. Or when he goes to the NFL maturely. Iamaleava. Brew McCoy and Squirrel White at receiver. Is there a better tandem of names?
There can't be.
Brew McCoy. Dude, imagine your nickname was Brew in college.
Isn't this I think this is Brew McCoy's 4th team since he started, because he committed to Texas, I think, and then went to USC and then transferred to Texas, and now he's on Tennessee.
So his real name's Horace. He's from LA. Yeah, he played for USC before.
Because he committed to Texas, decommitted from Texas, and then later that day chose USC, and then jumped in the portal immediately.
He's pulling a Van Wilder.
He's a
Leva. In college. He's a Leva. All right, interesting teams. Now, we teed it up with 3 main teams we want to talk about. Tennessee's interesting as well. But the interesting teams, I think, the rest of the way, Texas A&M, they're always going to be a team to keep an eye on because we just want all this talent to work. Well, some people do want all this talent to work under Jimbo Fisher. They bring in Bobby Petrino to potentially run the offense, but Jimbo Fisher's stubborn.
Can't
so
run a motorcycle.
Yeah, we'll see about that. Ole Miss, obviously, with Lane Kiffin there, and the transfer portal and how they use it, they're going to be interesting every season. Auburn brings in Hugh Freeze. He's an elite coach. Man, that's interesting for me there. And then Arkansas, Tyson. KJ Jefferson's back. Sam Pittman just runs a little bit different of a program there. So take it from any team you want and kind of this interesting group and a team you want to highlight.
Well, we're going to start with Texas A&M because I sat here last year, didn't buy an ounce of the hype. And if you were listening, you were able to profit off of that. And so one of the things that I'm not worried about, and that was a little victory lap I had to take, but one of the reasons I'm not worried about Georgia, we're never worried about Alabama, is because the culture in place is so strong that seemingly whoever walks through that door is ready to play at a high level. Jimbo Fisher hasn't had a culture like that in a long time. And we're clinging to a couple really good seasons at Florida State, right, with really good players. And now he has really good players. He's in the SEC. This is what he wanted. He has $100 million in the bank account. And they go 5-7 a year ago with all that hype. So what do? You bring in a guy who, Bobby Petrino, really, really good college football coach. Also, might not be the best guy to bring into that locker room right now with a lot of the problems that they have seemingly from a culture fit. Like, we can talk about Connor Weigman. We can talk about Moose Muhammad III and all the really good skill position players they have. And they're awesome. Everybody on that team, there's no real holes if you were to examine the roster on paper. I don't think this team knows how to win. It didn't look to me like this team gave a shit last season at all. And it was evident by week 3 that this team was going to underdeliver on expectations. And so I'm a little curious now. And I understand the number isn't the same as it was. Actually, it might be.
8.5,
what was it over? Yeah. So
over, by the way, juiced over.
And so now we're sitting here in August after what they did to us a year ago with seemingly a worse team on paper again. I don't get it.
I think Max Johnson might actually start, dude. I don't know. It's weird.
He's not good enough.
I don't know. It's strange. But here's what I'm hearing. Apparently, Bobby Petrino's coming in, and they don't know if Jimbo is going to give him the reins. That's what I'm reading.
Because it sounds like a recipe for disaster, and all of a sudden that buyout gets lower and lower, and you got somebody that is college football royalty looking over your shoulder wanting your job.
Yeah, so if you're a Jimbo, you're saying you wouldn't do it. I mean, but it was the offense under Jimbo has been so bad. Like, why do you even bring him in then if you're not going to let him run the offense? It makes no sense to me. I'll touch on Ole Miss real quick, and we'll get into more of these teams in more depth in Money Making Time. But Jackson Dart's back. Like, he was good last year. I mean, 3,000 yards, 62.4% completions, 20 touchdowns, 11 picks. Is he going to get benched for Spencer Sanders?
Yeah.
You think so? That's what I'm thinking, man. It feels like Lane wants to bench this kid.
I don't really understand it. I think Jackson Dart hits every single note of a Lane Kiffin quarterback. Like,
right.
The name is there, the performance on the field, kind of the way he carries himself. It's like this is a match made in heaven. And then they get Spencer Sanders and Walker Howard from LSU, who's not going to play, but that is a big time transfer to bring into a program to sit and watch.
For sure, and that's what he does. That's what he does in the transfer portal. He gets big names. He lets you attack, or stays in the headlines and wants to show like, yeah, we're good here. We're good here. Let's move into some participation trophy.
Let's talk about Ole Miss one time, because I was hyping up Braylon Allen last time and how he's going to be super special in the NFL. Quinshon Judkins had maybe the best freshman season I've seen from a running back in a minute. And it's been a while since the days of really like looking over your shoulder and being like, did that freshman running back just put up 1,700 yards in the SEC on a pass-first offense? Like, this dude is going to be elite. So I don't know how much it matters who's starting at quarterback, because the show, weirdly enough, for Lane Kiffin is going to be on the ground.
I'm looking forward to that. He was a stud last year.
1,565 yards.
Now, participation trophies, we don't want to be like, like these teams have no shot, but really they do. And that's Missouri, Florida, Kentucky, Mississippi State, South Carolina, Vanderbilt. And if you're a Kentucky fan, I know you're going to be probably a little bit pissed at this because on paper, you guys have a great team. But let's be honest, you ain't beating Alabama, you're not beating Georgia, and you're not competing with LSU. And so I think these teams are definitely fun to watch. And I like betting on them week to week. I like following their culture, especially at South Carolina. I think Shane Beamer is doing a great job there. Clark Lay at Vanderbilt is starting to build at least what he can at that program. But the rest, it's just we have question marks about Eli Drinkwitz at Missouri. Apparently, there's already questions about Billy Napier at Florida. I don't really get that.
I have him.
And then,
that's it.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people. You're not the only one. And then, obviously, rest in peace to Mike Leach at Mississippi State. And so Zach Arnett steps in, and we don't really know what it's going to look like. And so these are just teams, like they're going to beat up on each other, going to beat up on teams outside of the conference. But when it gets down to it, they don't have a shot to win the SEC.
And so we talked about Kentucky a little bit, and I think if you were just tuning in, if you didn't watch Kentucky last year and you kind of just examined the draft, you would have thought like that offense was pretty good. That offense scored 17 points a game. And I think that you're on the same page with me. Devin Leary might be an upgrade as a college quarterback over the production that they were getting from Will Levis last season. And where Will Levis guys? It's just this was bad. And like he was banged up and he was hurt and all that stuff. But like, I don't know. It's a lot of newcomers for all these teams. And so it's really hard to sit here and say Missouri's defense improving by so much. That was one of the stories of the entire conference last year was like, oh, Missouri's out here holding teams to less than 25 points a game. Is that going to hold? Is that sticky year over year? I doubt it. It's really hard to kind of they're little brothers, and it's not like a disrespectful thing. It's just when the top half of the conference is all in the top 10 of recruiting and the bottom half of the conference is sticking around the 80, 85 number, it's real hard.
Yep, that's for sure. And Liam Cohen's back for Kentucky as the OC after doing a stint with the Rams. So I'm excited to see what he can bring from his time with Sean McVay. All right, Tyson, let's get into money making time now. Like we said, we're going to go through more teams in detail as we get through this section. And those of you unaware, and this is your first time watching, we go through every single team in the conference, analyzing their win total and giving out what we think is our best bets, what we are personally playing here in the SEC conference. But Tyson, before we do that, we got to pick our SEC champs. We got to go through it. We've done it for every single conference. Last year we did okay. Like we wanted to improve. So I think we picked some winners in the other ones. I had to go heart over head. And the Big Ten with my Penn State Nittany Lions. Are you going to do the same in the SEC, or are you going to try to make it a clean sweep of 5?
No, I got to go Georgia. I really want to go LSU. I don't think LSU at plus 460 is bad value because I think they're really close to Alabama talent-wise this season. But it's a different thing in Georgia. I also just think Georgia Kirby Smart said if you don't like their schedule, come play it. And I think there's a handful of teams around the SEC that would gladly take him up on that offer. I think they're going to get through unscathed in the regular season. And honestly, in the East, they could trip up in week 3 and be fine. They could trip up week 3 and week 5 and still make the conference championship game. And at that point, it's best on best. And I just think their best is their ceiling, again, is the highest in the country. And we just talked about Ohio State. We talked about Michigan. We talked about Penn State. Everybody, as you run through these conferences, it just feels, dude, they're more physical. They're more athletic. They seem better coached, and they seem to want it more than everybody else, which is impossible to quantify until these dudes get on the microphone and they're like, oh, y'all thought we couldn't do it again. And it's like, nobody said that. Like, who got you to believe that?
Yeah, who's y'all? Yeah, I'm with you, man. Georgia minus 110. And we have to give a caveat here. Last year, we were all in on Alabama. We're like, woo, we get Alabama for plus money, baby. Let's go. And Georgia was plus 200 last year. Now they're minus 110. So that gives you an idea of what people are expecting from the old Georgia Bulldogs this year. But I'm rolling with you. If I'm taking a shot on my Penn State Nittany Lions, I got to go with at least the safest one on the board here because we said we want to do better last year when picking our conference winners. That's what we're doing. We were great on win totals. We were great in the SEC last year. Let's continue on this year and see what we can do, Tyson. As Florida is first up, win total at 5.5, over juiced minus 134 on FanDuel, under plus 110. Anything you're leaning with Billy Napier in his 3rd season with the Florida Gators?
Well, let's see if I can if I can convert you over to my side here, this team's not making a bowl game. I don't think so. I think making a bowl game would be a really, really good season for this Florida team. Like Montrell Johnson and Trevor Etienne, awesome. If you've been paying attention, we've mentioned the running backs from pretty much every college that we've discussed, because there's a lot of really good ones. Like Austin Armstrong is going to come in and coach a defense, brand new, all that stuff, hit a lot of transfers. That's sweet. Graham Mertz is their quarterback, Brad. I don't know if there was a time at Wisconsin that I watched Graham Mertz and thought, if you drop this guy off on a below average SEC roster, he gets him to a bowl. And I'm not backing off that stand. Like, you can think what you want about Billy Napier. This team is closer to the bottom, talent wise, than even dude, Kentucky's going to dog walk them. How's that?
Oof, I don't know about that. They're at Kentucky, so that's a question. Well, you remember when Graham Mertz threw 5 passes and they're all touchdowns? Do you remember
that's
that?
True. That's true. That version. If you drop him off from that Saturday, then I might change my mind.
Since that point, I think he's only thrown for 15 more touchdowns in his life. No, I'm kidding. So, like you said, Mertz is coming in. Now, Tyson, last year at Wisconsin, I'm just going to read his stats. 2,100 yards, 57.3% completion percentage, 19 touchdowns, 10 picks. Just, my skin's crawling.
So, Anthony Richardson last year, if he puts up those exact same numbers, he gives you 700 more yards and 10 more touchdowns on the ground that Graham Mertz was going to give you. And that was a 6-win football team.
They won 7 last year.
I thought
they went 6. They won in the bowl game. I
6 and 7 regular season. Excuse me.
Yeah.
But yes, so to me, that's the difference. One guy went number 4 overall in the NFL draft, and occasionally looked like he couldn't hit water if he fell out of a boat when he's throwing the ball. But then he'd turn around and rip off a 45-yard touchdown run. Graham Mertz isn't doing any of that.
Ooh, so here's my thing. I'm going to take a shot on the over 5.5.
You're sick.
All you have to do is get bowl eligible. They did that last year. Now, they're losing a lot. They're 107th in returning production, which does scare me. But Billy Napier has been able to recruit for another year, at least get some guys in, attack to the transfer portal. Sure. We'll see. Tyson, this is their schedule for toughest games. At Utah, that's the first game of the year, and they may be starting a third-string quarterback, Utah. There's a lot of things going on there. They host Tennessee. I think Tennessee is not going to be very good. Spoiler alert when we get to them. Host Georgia. Okay, that sucks. At LSU, that sucks. Then host Florida State. That's a rivalry game. We all expect Florida State to be good. Tyson, their non-con is McNeese, Charlotte, Florida State. Some toss-ups at Kentucky. You think that's a loss. At South Carolina. We'll see. Host Arkansas, at Missouri. If I go through this, I can get to 5 wins. All we need to do is steal one somewhere in that schedule. We get to 6. I'm taking the over.
I looked at that and said, I see 5 wins. I'm going 5.
Moving on to Georgia, theirs is 11.5. Over plus 116, under minus 142. So they have to go undefeated in the regular season to accomplish this feat. The odds makers say they think it's going to be less likely than likely. What do you think about the Georgia Bulldogs?
I think the same thing with Michigan, kind of, where until week 10, they don't have to play anybody, and then it's Ole Miss. And that doesn't really count to me. And then the week after that, it's Tennessee, and jury's out. We'll see what that quarterback room and situation looks like for both those schools at that point. They better be undefeated at the end of this regular season, or else I think it's a letdown. I'm going over mainly because look, I don't like being too leveraged, especially at the top of conferences. The East and the SEC is different than playing pretty much any other conference, because I think they go undefeated, and I'm already clear of my conference championship win bet at that point. I'm at least going to make out even if they don't win it, if they go undefeated, which I think is going to happen.
I like the way you think there. I'm going to stay away from it, and this schedule is a joke. Honestly, come play it. Dude, sign me up. I'll play this schedule. Are you kidding me?
Tennessee, Martin, Ball State, South Carolina, UAB.
UAB? Come on, Georgia Tech? Really?
They catch Vandy towards the end of the year. Oh. It's not bad.
So I'm going to stay away from it. I do think they can go undefeated. I just don't want to bet that, because I feel like a lot of people are like, oh yeah, of course, Georgia, boom, we'll take a plus money. So I'm just going to stay away from it, me personally. I'm just like we did with Texas. I'm just going to say Georgia's going to make it to the SEC championship game, and if I have to hedge on the other side with likely an underdog in Alabama or LSU, I will do that. So at least we make some sort of money back. but I'll stay away from the win total here. Kentucky, similar spot, 7.5 over juiced. Or I'm sorry, over is plus 118. The under is juiced minus 144. Now this opened 6.5. A lot of sharp money came in and pushed this win total up to 7.5. Now you can buy back down if you got it at 6.5. But for those who got in late, what do you think about Kentucky?
I'm going to do it. This is another little shot play here. Kentucky over 7.5 is a play that I want this season. And you can look at the defense and just say, oh man, they got 5 starters back again. Like it's Stoops, man. Like Mark Stoops and is it Brad White, his defensive coordinator? It seems like
yes,
every year there's question. They lose the best defensive player they've had in program history. And then they just replace him with another one. I think the defense is going to be fine. And I think the offense is going to be better. Like you said, Liam Cohen is back. And again, man, I have more faith in Devin Leary to put up more than 17 points a game than I had in broken down Will Levis a year ago.
I'm staying away at 6.5. I love that number. I'm so pissed that I missed that, to be completely honest. And we're not going to give you picks like, oh, we had this in pocket. Like, yeah, sorry, go screw yourself. Like, no, 7.5. I'm not playing it. Tyson wants to take a shot. Now, the difference is it's plus money. So he's like, okay, if everything goes right, we're getting a return here. I'm just going to stay away from it. There's other teams I like.
Part of that is because if you are going in and if you're in the Chalkboard app, which we tell you about, there's some SEC picks in there that have changed already. But the odds lines suck on FanDuel right now for the SEC.
Brutal.
Like everything, there is no real other spots to locate good plays at this exact moment.
And if you've listened to us and our past podcasts where we break down the conferences, we don't like to lay big numbers, especially in win totals. So we don't advise that. We're going to have to do that for some of them here in the SEC. So just
you almost have to for content. We're doing content plays, a little bit of it, but we're going to back it up with our own money too. So it's a catch-22 here, Brad.
So we're right. Now Missouri's 6.5 over plus 116, under minus 142. Similar spot here. You know, like I'll be frank here. The odds makers are kind of telling you on some of these teams, like, hey, the East, well, we know Georgia's good, but we don't really know who else is good. And at least that's what I'm gathering. What are you playing on Missouri?
I want to play the under, but you've heard me say this throughout a lot of these college football pods. I am going to play game over game plays on Missouri a bunch. And like, I think that the country is still going to be a little slow to catch up on the defense. It was good last year. So I think there's going to be some underplays and stuff here you can kind of locate with Missouri. But like, they got to be closer to the bottom. They have to be.
I'm taking the over 6.5. This is my shot play on Missouri. Now I'm going to tell you why here. One, I really like Eli Drinkwitz. Like I
like
really
Brady Cook?
thought he was. Well, here's my thing. Returning for another season in that offense, and we've seen when you have returners in the Drinkwitz offense, it tends to do well. Now that was at App State, so it's a different level, but just in a vacuum, like you learn the system, you perform better. Last year he went 2,700 yards passing, 64.8% completions, 14 touchdowns. That needs to be better. 7 picks. That needs to be better. But Cook can run a little bit, man. 585 on the grounds for 6 touchdowns. So I like the fact that there's a returning quarterback. They're 9th in returning production across the board, Tyson. 77% back on offense, 80% back on defense. And when I look at this schedule, they get a host LSU. Now they have to go to Kentucky, to Georgia. Those are going to be very hard. They host Tennessee. I think that's a winnable game for them. Then the toss-ups I have, they host Kansas State, they host Florida, and they go to Arkansas. I don't see that Arkansas game being too crazy. And then the non-con, South Dakota, Middle Tennessee, and Kansas State is their 3, and they're potentially adding another one in there that could be a cakewalk. So I get 4, I think 3 easy ones for sure in South Dakota, Middle Tennessee. I think they beat Tennessee. So you're sitting at 4. I can find 3 more across the board.
My laptop just about burned a hole in my table.
So I'm playing over 6.5 here on Missouri and my boy Eli Drinkwitz. They won 6 last year. Come on, man. Just one more. South Carolina, similar boat. Over is plus 144. The under juiced minus 178. Now, they overachieved last year, did South Carolina, in the second season of Shane Beamer. I said everything besides it. He's been 15-11 in his 2 seasons. Actually been really good for what South Carolina was before. But Tyson, they lose a ton. They're 102nd in returning production. Now, Spencer Rattler is back for a second season here at South Carolina. Apparently, he's looked really good. Are you going to play anything here on South Carolina Gamecocks?
No, and I would advise against it. I think for everybody, I think some of the South Carolina money, if you wanted to play the over, is because you just watched them play Tennessee and Clemson last year, and you were like, "Holy shit! If they can do that again, we'll be fine." That was like one of the biggest anomalies in the history of college football. They went from total trash to just beating two of the better teams in the country. Look, dude, we still don't really know. Like we know actually at this point, Spencer Rattler isn't going to be a significant ceiling raiser for a college program. And like, what is South Carolina's floor? That's the question you have to ask yourself.
Tyson, I'm taking the floor. I took him over last year, and you laughed at me. You're like, what, really? And I got lucky. I got so lucky with South Carolina. So I'm betting against that luck this year. Now I'm laying -178, so it's not.
They would beat Georgia at the end of the year.
Dude, they were red hot. It was crazy. I'm just laying it. I'm laying it, man. I love Shane Beamer. I love what he's building there, but at some point the luck has to come back the other way. And so I will lay this juice, taking under on the Gamecocks this year. Tennessee is sitting at 9.5. Now over +146. I mean, this is a huge number, man.
This
I mean,
is crazy.
over +146, under -188, which is just brutal as a number. Just give us 9 or 8.5 and let us make a decision. But alas, we're sitting at 9.5. Are you going to play anything on Tennessee?
No, because I would play the under, and at -188, like they'll lose to somebody on their schedule that is a plus like 200, 240, 260 underdog that pays you just fine.
Missouri, I'm telling you.
I mean, that's 400, but even then, I mean, we're doubling.
I'm staying away as well. I just can't lay -188. Like I said I had to play it. Yeah, I do. They're going to suck. Bet against them a lot this year. A lot. Vanderbilt over -170, under +138. Now, Tyson, I am a big fan of Clark Lea. Clark Lea, I think is what you say. Lea.
Mm-hmm.
He comes over from Notre Dame, supposed to build this program. I think he's done a great job. I mean, last year they went 5-7. 2-6 in conference, Tyson. This is Vanderbilt football. 2 wins? What? Throw a parade.
AJ Swan could play a little bit.
AJ Swan can play a little bit. Now, he played in 9 games last year. He wasn't the starter to start the year. 1,274 yards, 58.1% completions. That needs to change. But here's the impressive thing in 9 games for a Vanderbilt quarterback. 10 touchdowns, 2 picks. What? So, you taking anything on Vandy?
No.
Oh, I thought I could bait you.
Somebody still has to be the worst team in this conference. And like last year, they went 5-7, so maybe it's a respect play a little bit. But if you run through, like, it's been the worst defense in the conference the last couple of years. Outside, like, there's no real skill position players to talk about. Like, Will Shepherd is pretty good. Actually, the wide receiver, I think he's fairly underrated because, again, nobody's watching. But at the end of the year, if Vanderbilt goes 5-7, and that's the high note in the entire tenure of this coaching staff, you wouldn't even bat an eye. If Vanderbilt's at 3 wins, it feels natural.
Now, you made your decision, but I want to throw this out to you. This is our non-conference. Host Hawaii, host Alabama A&M, at UNLV, who's going through a quarterback change, at Wake, who's going through a quarterback change, who we project is going to be bad this year. That could be 4 wins right there, Tyson. Is this the Kansas no sweater from last year?
You don't get to do this. You don't get to say in the Wake schedule part, well, they have Vanderbilt. So maybe they figured out the quarterback there and then come back and be like, Vanderbilt's got to play Wake. That's easy.
Oh, I want to take the over on Vandy just because I'm a sicko. And it worked for me last year. Kansas and Arizona, everybody was selling. But listen, when you got to play an SEC schedule, it's different than playing a Pac-12 and a Big 12 schedule. I think we all know that. So no play for me here, unfortunately, on Vanderbilt. Let's get to Alabama, who's at 10.5 on the win total, over +148, under -184. They went 10-2 in the regular season, won their bowl game to get to 11-2, but they would not have hit this last year because of their 2 losses. So, are you taking a shot here on like you're going to get +150 on betting on Alabama? My God.
No, but it really feels like you should, doesn't it? It
Right?
feels like you look at this line, you're like, how disrespectful. And then you start examining things a little bit deeper beneath the surface. Like, I think LSU's a safer bet at 9.5 right now, and they were 8.5 when the books opened. This is everybody telling you that they think Alabama's a 10-1 football team, maybe 9. Like, there's a chance that this is a the first true step backwards that we see after they kind of changed the entire function and form of the way they scored points. This might be a reversion back to the Alabama football that we all kind of still have in our head. I don't know how you go 5 wide every play if Milroe can't throw the ball.
That's the problem, right? And Tyson, they play Texas, who's supposed to be good. They got to go to A&M. For whatever reason, going to A&M has not panned out well, even when they had elite teams for this Alabama team. Host LSU, revenge game. At Auburn, we all know things get funky in the Iron Bowl. Jeez, I mean, you're looking at, if you split those, I mean, would you be shocked? You know what I mean? Like,
I wouldn't be shocked if they went 4-0 in them either.
No, me either. I mean, it's Alabama football. Like we got to have, like we can tear them down, but my God, it's still Nick Saban, and they still got the A on their helmet. I'm not playing anything either with Alabama. I want to take a shot. I just don't have the balls to do it. So let's move on to Arkansas, who's sitting at 6.5, over -160, under +128. Now, Sam Pittman's in his 4th year. KJ Jefferson returns after throwing for 2,600 yards last year, 68% completion percentage, 24 touchdowns, 5 picks. Very good out of KJ last year, and 640 on the ground, 9 touchdowns added as well. But Tyson, they're losing a ton, man. 106 in returning production. Offensively, if you get 58% back, defensively only 51% back. They got a tough schedule at LSU, at Ole Miss, at Bama, at Florida, hosting A&M. Then some toss-ups. I mean, they got to host Auburn, Missouri, which you prefer, but geez, that's a brutal schedule.
Look, there's a chance KJ Jefferson is the best quarterback in the SEC.
Woo!
I mean, who would be like that you're unequivocally pounding the table for that's better than Daniels. Him? Well, it's close.
Yeah,
it's at least
talking
close.
About college quarterback.
Yes,
right?
Yeah. And because we don't know of the young kids, right? If Carson Beck comes out and puts up 4,000 yards, everyone's going to be like, of course, like shut up.
Yeah.
Right. But right now, I think he is, and this is a team that won 7 games a year ago. And I talk about how I hate these numbers all the time. And of those tough games you mentioned, I think Arkansas probably splits. Even if they lose 3 and win 1, you're still hitting your number when you look at this schedule. Like, I think this is at least another 7-win season.
Ooh, so you're taking over 6.5 here.
Yeah.
Laying the juice. That's interesting. I want to do the same here, Tyson. I just, they're bringing in a new offensive coordinator who'd been there before. I'm wondering how the offense looks. Now, apparently KJ Jefferson wasn't very happy with the offense last year. And so this was a move over into something that, first of all, Pittman wants to do, to be more aggressive running the football, which is what Jefferson wants to do, get downhill.
Rocket Sanders can play too.
Rocket Sanders is really good. He's the only reason why Jefferson didn't lead the league in rushing lead the team in rushing for 2 seasons in a row. It's because Rocket Sanders existed, or else that would have been the case last year. So I think if Jefferson can continue his accuracy with the football that he showed last year and continue to make strides as a passer, they can hit this number. I just don't want to bet on it. Like, I just don't want to. I don't know what it is that's holding me back, because I really like Sam Pittman.
November.
Laying 160.
Like, that whole month seems to be when Arkansas football comes back to earth, no matter what year it is. So the second half of the season, I'm almost banking I have to hit this number by halfway before Halloween. I'm dead.
Well, the good news is they play Western Carolina, Kent State, who's the worst team in the country, BYU, and FIU. So there's 4 wins right there. Now, Auburn, this is a team I'm super interested in, man. I'm just going to tell you right now. I'm a huge Hugh Freeze fan. Like, I get the whole scandal stuff, whatever. I'm just as a football coach, the guy's a stud. Peyton Thorne's transferring in from Michigan State, and now we kind of made fun of Peyton Thorne a little bit on the Big Ten podcast. This is a guy that Hugh Freeze wanted to come in and transfer to his program. He's actually been pretty good for Michigan State, I got to admit. Like, it's fun to make fun of him, but, I mean, he's been good. Now, Tyson, normally when a new coach comes in, you see a max exodus. Well, Brian Harsin was such a disaster. Everybody's like, yeah, might as well just stay at Auburn and get Hugh Freeze here. They're 28th in returning production.
And they had one of the best transfer classes in the country, because everyone else was looking at that and they're like, oh, I want to go play for him too.
This is my favorite play in the conference. Over 6.5 for Auburn. Give me the Hugh Freeze ball in Auburn at Jordan-Hare to make something crazy happen. Thank God Penn State doesn't have to play him this year. We got the 2 years of Brian Harsin.
Yeah, that was nice, because those were electric atmospheres too, and you didn't know yet that Auburn was going to be that bad. I'm with you on this over pick. I think you laid it out pretty well. I don't have too much to add. It's Auburn football, man. Like, they are not supposed to be continually at the bottom. And what do? They go in and get a guy who's proven that he can win in this exact situation before, to get you over that hump. And like, if Auburn wins 9 games, I'll be less surprised than if they win 4.
Yes, I think that's a good way to put it. Now, LSU, they're at 9.5, over -114, under -106. And as Tyson alluded to, we in our chalkboard app that Tyson will tell you about at the end, he gave LSU out at 8.5 way earlier in the summer. So listen, that's not to be like, woo, yeah, look at us. It's just like, that's why we want you in the chalkboard. It's
I'm
fun.
a degenerate. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's a little plug for the chalkboard app here. What are you doing on LSU 9.5?
I really want to take the over. I do. You know what? Screw it. I'm doing it because I love Brian Kelly and I have to die with my guy. So I'm taking 9.5. And it's not just that, like, oh yeah, I love Brian Kelly over. No, Jaden Daniels is back and we went through it for another season. They're getting a ton of production back. Tyson, I only have their hardest games at the first game against Florida State and then at Bama. Like they're way more talented than the rest. Let's say they lose those two, they can win out. Like I don't see anybody on this side that can really push them based on who they have there. Like this isn't an LSU team in the past where like, are they going to be focused? Are they going to be ready? You better be ready to play. If Brian Kelly's there, he's going to find somebody who will. And now he's got enough guys on the roster. He's going to find some people who are ready to play. So I'm taking over 9.5 LSU, and I'm going to be sitting there and sweating it out while you're going to be picking your feet back up and able to sit through 3 losses if it comes to it.
So, Brad, pop quiz. Who is the best coach in the entire country at hitting their over?
That would be Mr. Brian Kelly.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. Who is the team coming off of their first game this year is against a team that beat them on a missed extra point last year that you think the entire team all offseason has been focused on, including that head coach that has hit that number every time?
That'd be the LSU Tigers.
Gotcha. And then so their other hardest game, who is the monkey that head coach kicked off of his back to start his tenure in Louisiana State?
Wouldn't that be the Alabama Crimson Tide, Tyson?
Yeah. And then you end the season with Texas A&M, who it takes 7 overtimes to beat LSU, and that is a proven fact. Also, Devin White intercepted that pass. That game was over in the 4th overtime. Texas A&M has never beat LSU. LSU is going to hit over 9.5 as well. I think this is a double-digit win football team. This is a team that at certain points early in the season last year, it looked like they might win 7 games. Like that game against Florida and stuff, it looked like a completely different team. The first half against Florida State looked like a team that's never played together because this is a double-digit football team. This is a team knocking on the door of the college football playoff, and this is a team in a conference where you don't have to win the conference championship to get into that playoff. I think LSU is a look to make the college football playoff. I think LSU is a look to win the national championship. I think LSU is a look to win the SEC championship. And all of those things start with winning more than 9 football games in your regular season.
I should have had this up earlier. My fault. You would think they would star this game. What's the line here on Florida State and LSU?
Can you find it too
by chance?
Right now they have it all organized because we're all excited for week 0, and then it bogs down our boards.
Oh, here we go. LSU is a 2.5 point favorite, -140 on the money line. Interesting.
Ace Hardware called.
We're going to have to hammer that home.
We're
going to have to hammer that home. All right, moving on from our LSU love here. Now, this is great, though, actually. Now, Tyson's rooting for LSU. Obviously, that's his team. I'm rooting for LSU. He's rooting for Penn State. That's my team, Penn State. This is great simpatico this year. Sometimes he likes to root against me, not this year.
Most of the time.
Yeah, most of the time. Mississippi State's at 6.5, over +138, under -170. So we laid it out a little bit. Obviously, rest in peace, Mike Leach. It's such a tragedy, but this is sports betting. This is football. You got to move forward. Now, Zach Arnett takes over. He was the defensive coordinator. Will Rogers returns. I think that's a big thing for this football team. Throwing for 4,000 yards last year, 35 touchdowns, 8 picks, but they don't get a lot of returning production elsewhere. 91st in returning production overall. Defensively, it's even worse at 43%. Offensively, they do 71%, but I'm just curious how it's going to look without Mike Leach there calling the shots, pulling the strings. And Tyson, they host LSU, host Bama, at Arkansas, at Auburn, host Kentucky, at A&M, host Ole Miss. Sounds like a gauntlet to me. And then you step outside of that, you got Arizona, and we know Arizona's better. They got Southern Miss, dude. Frank Gore Jr., ever heard of him? This could
That's
be
500.
brutal.
That's
So
500 yards.
what are you taking here?
I want to take the under, but this is a little caveat for people out there. I have a personal policy, like first year head coaches are really hard for me to play anyways. And luckily, I don't like that number. So I get to kind of stick to my guns here and say that that's the reason I'm not taking it. In reality, it's because like I don't know what to expect. And I think they're going to suck.
I'm going to lay the juice here. And I hate the number, but I'm going to lay minus 170. I just don't see this football team getting over 7 wins. I think they can make a bowl game. I actually think that's the goal of this team
100%.
this year is to play a bowl game. Odds makers are telling you they can do it. 6 games, win 6. The 7th game, I think, is where we run into trouble. But if they get to a bowl game, I think they're going to be happy. But I just don't see anything over 6.5 games, 7+. Just can't see it happening. So I'm going to lay the juice. As much as I don't want to do it, I just don't see it happening at all here. Ole Miss, second to last one here on the rundown. 7.5 is their number. Over minus 114, under minus 106. Now, we laid it out a little bit. Jackson Dart's returning, but there's some guys behind them. Spencer Sanders transferring him from Oklahoma State who could take over. But Tyson, the interesting thing here is they're 30th in returning production with 71% of their team back. 80% of that, or 80% of their offensive production's back. 62% of their defensive production's back. And we've been making fun of Ole Miss's defense for a long time. They actually got some guys back for once. And this is Lane Kiffin's now 4th season here. It's finally his guys that he recruited, his guys that have kind of grown with him in the transfer portal. What are you doing with Ole Miss?
They got Pete Golding as defensive coordinator, which if you're an Alabama fan, maybe you're like, you can have him. That's an instant improvement over the Ole Miss defenses that we've seen in the past. Look, I have taken too many overs probably already so far, but Ole Miss to me kind of reeks of that potential upstart that is 8-0 at some point in the season, 7-2 or whatever late into the season before they come crashing down. And I like those odds. I think that that's who they are this season. I'm going over minus 114, taking that without really much hesitation.
Oh, I hate to do it to Lane. I'm staying away. Like, God, I think you're right, dude. I think you're so right on what this team can do. I mean, this is their hardest games. At Bama, host LSU, at Georgia. Okay, that stinks, right? Like, probably 3 losses there. You play the 3 best teams in the conference. Then you go to Auburn, host A&M. But in the meantime, you host Mercer, host Georgia Tech, host UL Monroe. You got to go to Lane. Be careful of that one.
That'll be tough.
So maybe it's not all toss-ups, but shoosh, man, I don't know. I'm staying away from Ole Miss, unfortunately. I would love to sweat a Lane Kiffin over, but I just can't do it this time around. Sorry, Lane.
You stayed away from Beamer and Lane.
I know. It's growth.
Yeah,
growth.
that's true. That's true. Look at you, 2023, baby.
Texas A&M to close it out, over plus 146, under minus 180. And I just want to say I am pissed off that they gave us this number at 8.5 with the juice under this heavy because, Tyson, I texted you, I'm playing Texas A&M over, thinking it was going to be 7.5, thinking it was going to be something like that where I could bet on everybody hating them. We took under last year, both of us. We were right at a big plus money number. I can't, in good faith, take a Texas A&M team to win 9 games. I don't care they're 7th in returning production. I don't care they have 82% back on the offensive side of the ball. I don't care their defense finally has guys with 77% back. It's going to be tough. And Tyson, they go to Miami, go to Tennessee, go to Ole Miss, go to LSU, host Bama, host Auburn, host Arkansas. If they're not ready to play, those teams are going to run them out of the gym. I'm staying away. I can't lay the under either.
No, at minus 180, it sucks. But it is nice to know that my least favorite program in the country has been joined in hatred, almost united across the entire United States.
Yeah, it is. And I was hoping to take that hate and twist it on people and get a nice, juicy overprice. But unfortunately, that was not going to happen here at FanDuel.
They didn't like us today, but that's okay.
We did good last year. Maybe that's why.
You think
they were like, hey, Brad and Tyson, no, we're not offering for you. Well, that's going to do it for our SEC preview. Like I said previously, go out and check out our other previews if you're getting ready for college football season. We got a ton of more content ready for you this college season. We can't wait, man. I mean, we are pumped up for this one. And Tyson, with week 0 around the corner, I'm not kidding you. What's today as we're recording this? This is Tuesday. Dude, I'm putting plays in Wednesday. I'm putting plays in Wednesday for week 0. Tell them where they can find it.
Yeah, it's the Chalkboard app, App Store, Google Play, wherever you download your apps. ISWIS presents the round. ISWIS the round table bets. I got to get that down, dude, because we're going on 55 of these and I can't seem to get the name straight. It's free, people. You wanted LSU 8.5, it's in there. You wanted all these numbers before they change. We have been putting them in the Chalkboard app. Every sport you can imagine. And it's not just us posting picks. Like if you hop in there and you want to say, man, I love Arkansas. I don't know what Brad's talking about. KJ is that good. Then hop in the chat and let us know about it. And like we're not going to kick you out for differing opinions.
No.
That's what makes it fun. We want as much engagement and as much shit talking as we can get in there. So hop in there and let it rip, man.
Definitely. We love
and
to have it.
You want to tease what the college football play of the week every week is going to be for the people?
Yeah, definitely. So Tyson and I are going to have a lot of fun this year. We're trying to do some creative stuff. So we're going to have plays of the week. We're going to do that on both sides of the college football and NFL. But people out there, we know you love parlays, and we don't necessarily recommend them all the time. But let's have a little fun this year. We're going to do a parlay of the week every single week throughout the college football season that are going to be at least plus 1,000 odds. Like that's the lowest we can go. So let's put a little cheddar down and see if we can hit something. Like it could be as high as plus 10,000, plus $1 million, like whatever the hell it could be. But the lowest you're going to get on these 4-leg parlays, because it's going to be 4 legs. We're picking 2 teams each. Is plus 1,000. Good return. $10 will win you 100. So that's going to be something. It's going to come out, and you can find all this stuff as well on our social media pages. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. It's all the same. Make it easy on you. At ISWIS_pod. Tyson already told you about the chalkboard. It's also in our description in YouTube and description in the podcast description as well. So you can click the link to that. But also like, subscribe, and share the show so you don't miss any of the amazing content that we have coming out for you this football season. For more than a college guy as well, we got NFL stuff. We got you covered there. If you're just a college guy, don't worry. We're going to have great shows for you throughout the entire 2023-2024 season. We appreciate you listening to all of our breakdowns so far. We'll be back this week, week 0, our first gambling edition of the season, where we unveil that parlay that we were talking about. Let's see if we can get off to the start early. We'll speak to you guys then. Till then, guys. Peace.